as 30-40% reduction in what they were getting 50 years ago. That's pretty alarming, which is one helps explain why food doesn't taste as good as it used to. It isn't as good as it used to. It's not as nutritious.
I always go to that scripture where God says it's good for a man to bear the yoke in his youth. God's saying up front, if you're going to have anything of value, you've got to work for it. But he says if you do it the right way, you want to do it early on, do the work up front, and if you've done it right, over time, it'll produce for you. And this is what I think is so neat about the wood chips and God's way. You see, when they came with chemical fertilizers, they told the farmer, you can have this immediate lush growth now. And they were right. What they didn't tell you down the road using these chemical fertilizers, that every year you had to use more and more to get the same effect, and your ground eventually became sterile. When you use the organic approach up front, it's kind of a lot of work to bring in those wood chips because you got to cover the ground. It takes a lot of cover. But over time, what I found at my place is that you start having this incredible gain. Initially, you put a lot down, and you have to, in a few years, you got to put it back again. But I'm finding that each time I put a layer on, it's a lot longer before I have to do it again because I have this incredible base built. And it's like you have a foundation that's just growing and getting, better and better. So over time, you're getting a higher and higher yield with less and less input, which is how it should be, because you get older, you have less energy, and you want to get return for your effort, and that's God's way. That's how he is. I love that scripture in this. It says, do not despise the days of small beginnings. And I just encourage you to be patient. Nothing happens of any value quickly. Things that are of value take time. And the beauty of this process is that as time goes on, it just becomes more and more valuable. So, if you don't expect miracles at first, because it's going to take a little bit of time. And as you plant things and you feel they're not doing as well as you'd like, then you can use fertilizers to supplement. Eventually you won't have to, but initially you might, and that's okay, because you've used them anyway before this, so you can continue to use them now. Good organic manures, if they're clean, work well. But as it goes, you'll find that you won't need to use those fertilizers, and you really have an investment that cannot be compared to what the rest of people are doing in dirt.
You got horses, you get horse manure. That's a given. Not too many constants in life, but that's one of them. You got to get rid of it. Okay, so what do? We clean the stalls, we take it out, we dump it in a pile. People want to use it for mulch. It has to be kind of a superior product. So what we do is we feed Eastern Washington hay. It's professionally grown, and there's no weeds in it. And that's really important, because the weed seeds will go from hay, will go through a horse's body unhatched, undeveloped, and come out, and you'll get weeds. We use fir and hemlock shavings, so they decompose very rapid, as opposed to using cedar, which decomposes or doesn't, very slow. And it's so simple, even I can do it. You just make a pile, and then I don't haul anything unless it's at least 6 months to a year old. In our garden up here, our experience has been you can plant right in it, because it's chips that have dissolved, as well as the manure and so on. So we've had really good luck that way. It would not be good in the garden without being decomposed with something else, That's a common complaint if you use straight horse manure. I'll go get some and show you a sample of it. You can see how there's no manure in there. It's all decomposed, and this is gradually decomposing also the same way. And as you use it, you'll notice that each year the soil gets better, especially if you, like Paul was saying, where you put down a ground up wood chips type thing and then cover with it. It makes a sustainable program. It's a recyclable thing, and then of course the vegetables or the flowers or whatever you have grow. They die for winter. You put more on. It's a circle type thing. Yeah, and it makes you feel kind of good, because ecologically it's pretty darn sound.
Our culture is so wasteful, and so most people think, well, get rid of this wood chip stuff, get rid of it. You cut stuff in your yard and stuff. One of the things that you probably know about Paul now is that any waste out of his garden goes over into the chicken coop or into the chicken pen. And then they eat it and munch it around and then poop. And then he brings that back over here and dresses the soil.
I think one of the most beneficial parts of a garden is to have chickens around, because there's such, I mean, the eggs are great, but you see they deal with all your waste, all of your yard waste, the expired stuff from the garden, my grass clippings, any weeds, all come to the chickens. And those are really nice organic products for them that they eat, and whatever they leave over turns into what we're going to be exposing here in a minute. They're out here all day long just kicking. You can see all those little grooves in here where they've been digging in, and they're excavating. They're constantly picking seeds out, any bug kind of thing. So they're working this material. And as you're going to see shortly, I'll tell you, I've never seen compost so nice. This almost approaches topsoil. This is such beautiful stuff. Anyway, I'll just show you how easy it is to get. You can just see what beautiful stuff this is. I mean, look at this stuff. It just won't compact. I mean, this is the ultimate topsoil. And it's all just good compost from my yard waste. I always say that my chickens are my soil manufacturing plant. The eggs are just a bonus. Look at this beautiful fine stuff. There it is, pretty quick.
Somewhere down there's a soil, and that's good. You know, presumably the soil has been protected, and in the meantime it's been breaking down and getting a little bit richer with time. But this mulch that is on top is basically organic matter. And that's one of the things that we're losing out of our soils around the United States is organic matter. Organic matter is wonderful. It holds the moisture up there. It's like a sponge. It just holds it there, and it just sits there. The plant can stick a little root hair in the water, and it sucks it. It's just like a straw about this big around. You know, it just comes up real easy. And plus, being in contact with that organic matter, it's got plenty of minerals, plenty of nutrients, lots of nitrogen and all that sort of thing.
It's quite interesting. People always ask me, well, what your soil's like if they tested this? I said, well, I've never tested it. I've always seen where I came from. It's getting so much better that I've just been really happy with my results. I think this is really neat. They did a soil testing, and we were actually able to see that all this stuff, I mean, the soil completely is over the top as far as, you know, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, which is what the plants have always indicated. But it's just nice to see that scientifically this, you know, meets the criteria. It's what it looks like. Every year in the same place I get a higher and better yield because the compost is being deposited into the soil via rain and water as a compost tea, and it's just like the soil is the bank, and it's a real descriptive of like compounding interest. Just gets better and better and better, and the beauty is I do nothing. Irrigation, well, the rain does great, as it does everything out there. Nature does everything with rain, and so it is here. Now in the summertime when I'm planting seeds out in my garden because it's dry on top, I'll water initially to get them up. But once they're up, I stop watering. When you go to plant and you pull them aside, if they're not wet, you want to water, because seeds have to have damp ground to sprout in. And so this, whatever state it's in when you go to plant will indicate whether you need to water or not. Irrigation is a big issue these days, especially with places where there's not much water or places when there's too much.
Although we're in Washington, the evergreen state, it's known for having lots of water. Here in the rain shadow of the Olympic Mountains, we're getting about 16 to 18 inches of rain a year, which is very dry. And of course, that dry season is the growing season as well. And so, the importance of efficient water use is just, at a maximum.
There are a lot of problems with irrigation. One is that it's a lot cheaper or easier. It's a lot easier just to waste water. Spray the water through the air or dump too much water on the ground, and it'll infiltrate and it'll sort of disappear, and so you're not bothered by it. But I think the last thing I heard was that irrigation on the whole is something like 50% efficient. It's, you know, about 50% of the water is getting to the crops. And now that water's getting scarce, and we're running out of water in a number of places around the world. We're actually, the North China Plain, for example, lots and lots of those farmers are going out of business every year.
The idea that we can use wood chips and reduce our water use by 95 to 99% is just really exciting. That's something that my friend Paul has proven over the years, and something that we're doing here as well now. Even in the short time, we've certainly seen water holding capacity and growth attributable to, you know, the fact that we've heavily mulched, you know, a lot of our plants.
And you see how it's damp down in here. And see, these tomatoes have never been watered and won't be watered all summer. You can drive a truck on it, it won't compact, and it just gets better and better and better. Here, have some of these tomatoes. They're starting to get ripe. This is what I get so blessed by. Look at this. Look how damp this is. And this is August. And it's going to stay this way. This will never dry out. And this is why I don't have to water. We're in dirt. You won't experience this. It's going to be compacted on top. You dig down, it's dry. But look at this beautiful material. You know, and I find it's you know, quite interesting in my experience. You know, I have a place here that I have a pond, and I plant my potatoes down there because they like to be watered. And I find that things around there grow so much better than they do when I water from the top. And I'm realizing that in the beginning, before the flood came, there was no rain. Everything was water with water coming up from the ground as a mist, and that is the ideal way to water. It's the ideal, and I think in Psalms it talks about a tree that's planted by the rivers of water. It brings forth its fruits in its season. Its leaf also shall not wither, and whatever it does shall prosper. You ever go along riverbeds or stream beds, you'll see the plants alongside the trees are just huge and lush and just gorgeous. And that's the ideal way to water, is to have sub-irrigation water coming up underneath. And I think it's so interesting, you know, in nature, you know, the ground, it maintains and holds that water, so it's always there. It's always available to plants on a continuous basis because of the capacity to hold it, you know. And watering from the top is so counterproductive in a garden situation because that's just, you know, not as effective as, you know, sub-irrigation or material that holds water, so you can just live off the rain. The rainwater is a superior water. Groundwater never compares to the benefit of good rainwater. And if you've ever done a garden, you see after it rains, everything just grows great. Nothing like when you watered, you know. So if you can live on that, that's the best. You'll find with wood chips the incredible advantages. There's no sponge that'll hold water like wood chips. I'm amazed at the water it holds. And for example, we live in a place where just 70 miles down the road there's a rainforest. It gets 15 feet, I'm not saying inches, 15 feet of rainwater a year. And when you walk in the woods, the forest there's no water near your feet. It's not spongy, it's not damp, it's damp, but it's not soggy. And it's amazing, those wood chips totally absorb that kind of water quantity. Another thing that's amazing about wood chips is when there's not enough, like it's like now if you look at my grass out in the front there, it's all brown, but in the wood chips in my orchard, it maintains the moisture. And here's the incredible thing about God and His design. When there's too much water, the wood chips displace it, and when there's not enough, it retains it. And at that point, I'd have to check out because that's too big for me.
The idea is with something like what Paul's got going here, is you're creating a layer over the soil that can act as almost like a blanket for the soil, so that the moisture level in the soil is staying up to the levels it should be. If this was blank and there was no mulch, 9 out of 10 there's a lot of runoff. I mean, there's water, just normal rain is taking any nutrients that are above and either leaching them away or leaching them down into the soil. Where this mulch, when the rain's hitting it, it's stopping right there. It's slowly working into the soil. The microbes and everything, the bacteria, the earthworms, everything that's living under that is protected. And then they are slowly decomposing that mulch down into the soil, which is the food for the plants.
You know, water is such an important thing. We couldn't live without it, you know, and I think it's quite interesting, the ratio and how it is on the earth. 75% of the earth is water. Our bodies are 75% water, and what I'm finding in my produce and fruit, it's 75% water. And I'm seeing a real connection here and a real balance. And what's interesting in plants that are growing in dirt that are irrigated with water,